And it's next week. We're back again. Different crew this time. Mike is not here. No Twisted Toe in the building. So instead, you have myself, Kyle Riley.
And Jake Poole in here.
And I am Matt Wishart.
It's the best to ever do it. It's your boy Arnold.
Three people we've all seen on the show before. And we have a lot to jump into, so let's just start. So this weekend was a quad header. We had 4 races to look forward to. There were 3 that were good. So let's start off with the one that wasn't. The ARCA West Series went to the Bull Ring. It was definitely a race. Sam Mayer was there. He's
Yeah,
probably
cars went around the track, dude.
he is
Isn't that crazy?
the only person that we really need to know was there because pretty much nothing else happened. My notes talk about one self spin, or no, it wasn't a self spin actually. It was Gio Scelzi spinning around as a result of Wallace Allen getting into their back bumper, and the 4-star fruit sponsorship that is in on either the 6 or 9 car. I don't know which one it was, but that's pretty much my entire notes. That was the only thing that happened in the race. Sam Mayer essentially led flag to flag, if not flag to flag. Did any of you have anything to add if you wanted to be part of that?
Yeah, after the East Series race at New Smyrna, I kind of had a little bit higher of an expectation for the West Series, considering, we got a couple more teams showing up and some new drivers, and it's like a whole new vibe in general, but, it's still the West Series. We only had, like 17 cars in the field. It's pretty much the Sam Mayer show, like you said, and the only person that had anything for him at any point was Jesse Love in the 19, but if he wasn't going to get around him on restarts, then there was just nothing was going to happen. And Sam and the whole GMS crew have a good package and relationship at this point. They've been running together for a while, so it's not too surprising that he just kind of ran away with it. But
Well, besides that, we had 3 other really good races this weekend. We'll go in chronological order, as always. We had the truck race on Friday night at the big Las Vegas Motor Speedway, not the short track. Kyle Busch is in this race, which usually means that nothing really happens. It's usually really a one-dimensional race where he just kind of zooms past everybody and nobody else really does much but contend for second. However, for once, for the first time in our entire lives, that has not happened because Sheldon Creed was putting up a great fight all day. There was, a lot to look forward to in the race. There's cars getting really out of control. Trucks, excuse me. Truck series after all. Um, and I have to say, I was very impressed from this race, or with this race, from start to finish. There's a lot of things that you could see and really be appreciative of in the moment and after the fact if you went back and watched it like I did for the podcast. There's things on the racetrack, there were things off the racetrack. Tyler Ankrum had a bruh moment when he pitted outside the box.
yeah,
Um, there was a few accidents if for some reason that's the thing you look forward to every weekend. I think every single NASCAR fan, every single type, could have left that truck race with something to look forward to. Or sorry, fuck, I'm gonna have to cut that out. Every single fan of every single kind in the NASCAR fandom all had something they saw in that race that they probably enjoyed, which is good because I don't think we get that very often, especially not when there's a cup driver just stomping everybody.
yeah. I mean, besides Kyle Busch, obviously there were the times where he'd run away from everybody. Um, but like you said, there was the Sheldon Creed battle, and that was really good. It was really fun to watch. And there were the times where Christian Ecke's obviously part of KBM also. He would be there with Kyle Busch. He wasn't, racing him super hard, which I wouldn't expect anyway. You're literally racing your boss at that point. But I do also know that Kyle Busch is appreciative of that when he does get raced hard by his drivers, because then it shows to him, hey, I'm here, I'm doing good. I can run with you. But he did show his ability to run with him for certain parts of the race before he had his issues. I forget exactly what happened at because I think did he blow a tire, something like that?
He did. He, I think, had a tire rub and lost the right front as a result.
Yeah. Yeah. So until that happened, I mean, for the most part, he was running with him. He was definitely running in the top 5 for the entire time until that. But yeah, it was nice to see. I mean, obviously, Kyle Busch running away is kind of lame, but at the same time, it's it's Kyle Busch. It's gonna happen. He's gonna run his 5 races in his truck and have a good time doing it. So, I mean, we also had Johnny Sauter lead some laps. The Christian Eckes did take the lead at some point for a little while, but Kyle Busch leading 108 out of 134 laps is not too new in the Truck Series.
One other thing that I did neglect to mention is that we now have a bounty out for every single race Kyle Busch is in, which I think is incredible because I've always been one that didn't like very many Cup drivers in the lower series. I didn't want to see anybody really in Xfinity or trucks. I feel like they, especially now that we have a playoff format, that rewards people who win races, and really what propels your entire season. I hate that we have people coming in from the Cup Series that take those away. However, it's no secret that the best driver to do that is Kyle Busch. I think in the history of the sport, Kyle Busch is the one driver who can do that successfully the most. He can go into any race any given weekend and just destroy everybody. So Kevin Harvick and I believe it was SMI, right? That also threw in another 50K.
It was Marcus Lemonis.
It was Marcus Lemonis? Okay.
World guy.
Yeah. Still though, regardless, they deserve a ton of credit because if anybody does take this challenge up and win a race, or if for some reason one of the truck regulars finally steps up and wins a race when he's in it, I think that's going to be another dimension to the race that we can really enjoy. I think it's going to be a whole other thing that gets talked about. Like we talk about the triple truck challenge. Wow, that was surprisingly easy to say. Every June, I think it's June this year too, where there's 3 races where you can win a lot of money. It's essentially the same premise, except it's just beat Kyle Busch. Don't worry about anybody else. Beat Kyle Busch. And I think that's going to make for a very, very exciting race the next time it happens, and the other 3 races that Kyle Busch is going to be a part of.
How does
Yeah.
that work if you're a cup or like a truck regular? Because isn't it just Cup Series drivers?
I don't think they qualify, but I definitely think that if it does happen and one of them win the race, they're going to make a huge scene about it. And
Yeah,
either
Yeah.
either they're going to get money or we're going to have a lot to talk about one week on one of the shows.
Yeah.
I think the main point of the bounty being for Cup drivers is that Kevin Harvick in particular wanted to get some of the other Cup guys involved in the the trucks, so it's not the Kyle Busch show. It seems these rules that were put in over the past few years seems to be the Kyle Busch rule because there wasn't really many other drivers that were abusing the lower series. You had maybe Carl Edwards and Kyle Larson was running quite a few races, but he was
Kozlowski and
also
Logano.
yeah. But as the first rule got put in, that kind of tapered off, and you kind of saw a shift back to full time and younger drivers being in the seats. But for some reason, they decided that they needed to limit it even more, even though drivers weren't using all those starts. But it's going to be interesting to see if anybody decides to come down.
Is Harvick gonna try himself? Do you think?
He doesn't qualify.
He
Yeah,
does?
he
Like-
should not be able to win his own money.
Congrats, you paid yourself.
Yeah, but there's the other guys.
Yeah, there is 50,000 from
And
Lemonis
there's-
at the same time.
That'd be an all-time.
Not having to give away money.
That'd be an all-time finesse. That'd be like when you win your own prize money in a league.
Exactly.
I believe it was also mentioned that if Kyle ends up winning, and again, even though there's people going for the bounty money is going to go to Kyle Busch's Bundle of Joy charity. So, that's
nice.
Yeah, somebody wins either way. It's just a nice gesture at the end of the day. I mean, obviously it's not nice from Kevin Harvick's standpoint because he's just like, I want to see someone go beat Kyle Busch. That's it. But Samantha was, I think, the one that brought that up to give it to the charity. So that'd be good. I mean, if Kyle Busch ends up going out there and winning the next 4 truck races that he does, it's not surprising, and at least there's $100,000 going to that charity.
I didn't know about the charity bit. Now it's like I'm rooting for kids to not get money.
Yeah, that's kind of bad.
Feel
Who
kinda
are we
bad
now?
about that.
I mean, we're
Well,
monsters either way. This is not going to be the deciding factor.
Yeah, fair enough. Honestly.
let's be real. Whoever as a Cup driver that comes down to win that money is probably just gonna end up. I mean, $25,000, a lot of money. Maybe not to a Cup driver though. So they'll probably still do something good with it.
John Hunter Nemechek's trying to eat.
It'd be hilarious. I think this would probably be the best scenario, right? Is John Hunter Nemechek is a full-time Cup driver now, and he
Yeah.
will be in truck races.
And
He's
let's not
already got
forget-
a truck, and you know what? He's in a Ford. So if he can get, if like, I don't know if what's it called? Whatever Joe Nemechek's team's called at this point. If it's affiliated with anybody, I don't know if it's affiliated with DGM Crossley or anything like that.
Well,
But-
DTM Crossley's Ford, they're Toyota, I believe, still.
No.
Really?
The Nemechek trucks are Fords, yeah.
Really? When did they? Oh, I don't know. They haven't been in the field all year, so who knows?
Yeah, they missed Daytona legitimately. So, but I mean that'd be cool. But the original thought that came into my head that made me transfer over to John Hunter is what if, because obviously it's kind of still a DGM Crossley truck, but it is a Front Row Motorsports labeled truck that Todd Gilliland is in. So what if they just have a second truck and they put Michael McDowell in it and he goes out there and beats Kyle Busch?
There's a lot of people that could be very interesting candidates. Because, like, let's even consider guys like Quinn Houff. Quinn is somebody you've probably never heard of. I follow this sport more than any other sport in the world. I spend the vast majority of all of my days either thinking about it or looking at it or learning something new about it. I have no idea who Quinn Houff is. I've watched him race a few times, and I say a few times very literally. He hasn't really done too much. He just kind of ended up in the Cup Series. But, I mean, somebody like him could easily, well, maybe not easily because they have to be Kyle Busch, but somebody like him could possibly win that prize. And that'd be very, very interesting. That'd put you on the map. We'd know who he is after that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't know about, what, Arnold?
Joey Gase. Like, what
Yeah.
counts as a Cup driver?
Joey Gase gang.
He's run both races, but he hasn't running for points, so I don't know if that counts.
I think you have. I think there was rules that got put out on Twitter. I think you actually have to be.
That's crazy.
Well, it's not like rules. It's like, hey, you have to be in the Cup Series. You have to be declared for the Cup Series. So you can't just be Ross Chastain and run everything.
Yeah, and what sucks is that, like, the one truck that, you know, people like Eric Jones and Chris Bell and people like that would end up in is the 51 truck when Kyle Busch is not in it. So those are kind of off the table. So that's kind of lame. And I mean, there's not a whole lot of I mean, there are a whole lot of trucks that could end up beating Kyle Busch, but I mean, at the end of the day, when you're Kyle Busch in the KVM truck, like, you are the pinnacle on the racetrack of cars or trucks, sorry, on the racetrack. So it's like there's limited spots for people to fill in. I mean, I don't know, GMS could maybe swing something for a Chevy driver. So
A
maybe,
team with
I
10
don't know,
teams
Tyler
already.
Reddick. Yeah, right. But I don't know what Nice is doing, because I know Ross isn't running every single truck race. So maybe that could be an option. I'm not sure. Either way, it's just something cool that's going on, and it gives spice to the races that we all saw on the list of Kyle Busch's schedule this year, and we're like, you know, like, cool, he's gonna extend his number of wins more than likely, but like, dang.
So with that, I guess we're just gonna move on to Xfinity. So we had 2 days of Xfinity and about half a day's worth of action, and I think I know why. Now, this is not to be taken in any sort of, you know, disrespectful way. I think a lot of these drivers are eventually going to be pretty good, but it'd be very, very
Full disrespect.
full disrespect. But it'd be very ignorant of me to say, or to not say, it's like we've taken a siphon and just took half the good drivers out of the series, and we replaced them with people that are going to be good but aren't yet. You know, and that's, like I said before, I'm not throwing them under the bus, but when you have a series filled with guys like, you know, Noah Gragson, who took a few years to get good in the truck series. Eventually he got there, but it took a while. You had guys like, you know, Harrison Burton. Harrison Burton never showed it in the truck series, but he's only been there 1 year, and then he automatically got moved up. Harrison,
Yeah, and I mean, he did show some promise in his Xfinity starts last year.
Yeah.
So I feel like about halfway through the season. I mean, look at 2016 with Daniel Suarez in Xfinity. The first half of the season, he wasn't like anything special at all, but by the second half, he was running well. He'd won Michigan, and he got himself into the playoffs, and through that won the championship under, you know, some pretty wacky circumstances. But it's still like, at that point in the season, he was a good driver, and he deserved to be contending for it. So therefore, he deserves to win the championship. And it's just, I feel like Harrison Burton's gonna be one of those type of guys. It'll take a little bit, but he won't be so far behind guys like Chase Briscoe and even, like, I don't know, you know, Austin Cindric, Justin Allgaier, Ross Chastain. He won't be like super far behind them.
yeah, I mean, like, let's just look at the full-time competitors in the Xfinity Series, right? And let's just try to think of who the Final Four is going to even be. You have the three people who I would consider to be essentially locks in Chase Briscoe, Austin Cindric, and Justin Allgaier. But who's that fourth person going to be?
It's gonna be Ryan Sieg. Watch.
Is it going to? It could be.
It
I mean,
could be.
he was fast.
It
this
really
weekend.
could.
Popped off, dude. Popped off.
He was
crazy.
quick, but you got to think, like, there's, you know, Harrison Burton, who we just talked about, Noah Gragson. Could Brandon Jones be the fourth best guy in Xfinity?
He could.
Like, it might sound crazy now in February, but later on in this year, he's still in Gibbs equipment, and you might argue that he's the best Gibbs driver right now, because, I mean, Harrison's going to take a minute. Riley Herbst is Riley Herbst. Like,
Yeah, that's just
Riley
it's
Herbst
just
is not
God.
happening.
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to be a tough scene for Gibbs this year, especially having Brendan Jones as the lead driver. They really don't have a veteran of the series or any real notable Cup drivers running a lot of races for them this year, besides Kyle Busch in his a handful of races. But that's one thing that these teams are lacking these days is that Cup experience, putting the team in the right direction. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Gibbs cars can get on the right track with their lack of experience.
One other thing that I do want to point out, though, and it's not all negative, thankfully, is how amazing those cars race still. Because even with the people they have in the series, even when Chase Briscoe is 20 million miles out ahead of everybody, those cars are so easy to race with. I feel like you can put on a good show anywhere when you have the right group of people. And I think that even, as long as these drivers continue to progress and kind of end where we think they're going to end, by the end of the season, we could have a lot of really, really good races in the playoffs. And I think some of them can be really unpredictable just because of how good the package is in the Xfinity Series. You could take them
Yeah,
to any kind of racetrack, and they usually always put on a show, and I think that's very, very good.
yeah, and not even just the way that the cars race and the way that the package is, but you have the smaller teams, like especially with guys like Riley Herbst and Harrison Burton being out there. I mean, obviously Harrison's a little bit better personally to me, but with those guys being out there in the good cars, it really opens up the door for smaller teams. Like we saw Brandon Brown being in the top 10 in his own. He built that car. Brandon built that car,
built it.
It is Brandon
and
Bill. I saw it on the
we
fender.
saw him up in the top 10 like all day. He finished 11th, but like still like he was right there all day. Josh Williams in a DGM car was out there. Jesse Little even in the JD Motorsports, which JD Motorsports has been like climbing up year after year. So to have someone like Jesse Little in it all year, like, but like you were talking about like midway through the season, like maybe those teams, the door opens up for them. I mean, not to plug the team I work for, but Tommy Joe Martins out in the Martins Motorsports car was running top 15 like all day until some issues came up. And it's like it really opens the door for those guys. Like I keep saying that phrase, but it really creates an opportunity for those teams to shine. Like top tens are really not out of the question anymore, like outside of short tracks for those guys. And it's nice to see, number one, and it gives you something else to watch because obviously we're gonna get races like this one with Chase Briscoe just kind of checking out. I mean, obviously he had some battles with Austin Cindric and whatnot.
And Ryan Sieg, he was out there. He nearly passed Austin Cindric with an undercut actually from Slugger Labby. And do you guys hear? He also before the rain delay yesterday, they actually stayed out and saved an extra set of tires.
Yeah,
And, like nearly got lapped, but Slugger Labby, insane call. Homeboy did that. Like if there was a caution with 20 to go or like 18 to go, he probably would have won. Honestly.
yeah, he had a
Like, there
good
were, there were,
chance.
like,
He was
10
up there. I mean, he
laps.
finished third. Like
Yeah,
he legit finished third ahead of
straight up.
a JRM car, two or three JRM cars, and all of the Joe Gibbs racing cars.
Guess
like-
what that car is? Guess what year that car is?
That was I saw it was the 2015 Austin Dillon
Yeah.
Las Vegas win car.
So that car from that old is beating the current JRM cars. If that
Yeah,
tells you.
it's crazy. I mean, as you like that midfield, I mean, obviously Ryan Sieg isn't really midfield anymore, but from like 11th down, like the Brandon Brown and the Josh Williams, Jesse Little, blah blah cars, those are all 100% like old chassis from KBM and JRM. Well, KBM doesn't exist anymore, but like they sold their cars off, and like even GMS when they died off, like they sold their chassis to people, and so those teams like they have great people on these smaller teams that can utilize that equipment to make it competitive. Like I can't remember where this specific Martins Motorsports car came from, but I mean just the people on the team, they're so dedicated and they work real hard to take that chassis and make it something that can run in the top 15, maybe even the top 10 like as the season progresses. And it's just I don't know. I'm having a lot of fun watching the midfield because it is cool to see Chase Briscoe do super well because I really like Chase Briscoe. And obviously he's going to have some heat from Justin Allgaier as the season goes on, so that'll be fun. But the midfield is going to be really fun. I wish Brett Moffitt was full-time in that 02 Hour Motorsports car. Unfortunately, that's not the case. I also wish Myatt Snyder was full time in the RCR car, but I feel like, especially with this last run from RSS Racing, it's not a huge step down for him, especially just to get seat time in the series. I don't think he's got a full schedule right now, but I don't know. Maybe some deals can be worked out and he could be a full schedule driver. But it's just a lot of fun. You don't have to always look at what's in the front because from 10th on back, it is a brawl.
And we'd be, selling ourselves short to not talk about the Myatt Snyder Noah Gragson incident. That was definitely not the best thing that ever happened. But
NACL, dog.
yeah, but let's face it. He definitely just went behind him and spun him out. For what, we don't really know. According to him, he said something happened on the backstretch, and that was really never shown on TV. I'm sure maybe.
Yeah, and then he comes out and he's like, "Oh, it was the air, like some weird air stuff." Like if you wreck somebody on purpose, admit that you wrecked somebody on purpose.
I agree.
Like it, not that it makes it any better, because I really liked Myatt, but at least admit that you did that on purpose. Come on.
And he tries to fist bump him, like, get out of here,
Yeah,
bro.
I love Meiser. That was so good.
Any of you guys?
I'm so ready for him to wreck him.
Any of you who watched last week's episode know that we kind of said how cool it was when Noah won at Daytona and all the stuff he did. We're gonna take that back, officially
I
redacted.
didn't say anything.
Yeah.
I've never supported him.
I don't.
Nothing, dog.
Listen, I'm just saying that a certain person, aka me, I said that it was pretty cool the way he celebrated, but you know what? Redacted. It's gone. Didn't happen. Erased from your mind. Anyways,
Don't watch it again.
didn't happen. So we're gonna move a little bit forward. Not to Cup, but we had a few other things we wanted to talk about really quick. So, I know F1 testing happened this weekend, and I feel like the most people qualified to talk about that are Arnold and Jake. So, go right ahead.
Yeah. I mean, the most important thing that happened in actual testing was definitely the dual axis steering. And I mean, I'm not going to bore you with the details, but basically, Mercedes can pull their steering wheel in to straighten out the toe of the front wheels on the straights and just save that scrubbing off speed, save that tire wear, and it's kind of insane. I don't know if you want to talk about it, Jake, but
Yeah, I saw that as well. It's pretty much the highlight of the whole testing session, and it's going to be really interesting if the FIA ends up letting them have it, which is what I think is they're going to do.
Yeah.
It might be a thing where all the teams are chasing to catch up, kind of like how with the blown diffuser was back in like 2011, the F duct,
The double diffuser, 2009.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year if just to see how much of an advantage these guys get from this. But yeah, these little
they're always
technical
gonna have an
things.
advantage.
It's
Like,
unique to F1. That's why people like the technical side of the sport. Teams find these weird things that give them speed.
yeah,
And it's something
that's-
they had in the bank too. Like they were thinking about this for years, and they
yeah,
were like, you know what?
they
It's
had
the last year.
approached
Let's
the
do it.
The FIA about it, and they were like straight up like, oh, they gave them details basically, and we're like, oh yeah, you know what? That's nice. You know what? We'll allow that
Yeah.
for this year, but they're banning it in 2021. So
Yeah. I mean, the whole car changes in 2021, so it makes sense. They're gonna have a whole new set of regulations. But you guys kept saying that that's the highlight of testing, and I wanna say I don't agree with that. I mean, obviously that's cool, but I think the real highlight, happened today. Well, time zones, they're weird, but Robert Kubica, as the reserve driver, the test driver for Alfa Romeo, went P1 on day 4 of 2020 F1 winter testing. And
Right.
obviously, I mean, he was on softs, and I know a lot of guys were on hards or mediums. They were just trying to,
Oh, he's
get
the best
long
F1
runs
driver
in.
now.
But like, that's still crazy to me to see from from finishing last 10th almost every single race, except for that one where he scored a point last year for Williams. To see him at the top above everybody else. I mean, it was pretty shuffled. He had Max was second on hards for the Red Bull, and Sergio Perez was third with he had medium tires on in the Racing Point. But still, Robert Kubica, P1. It happened. It's in the history books forever.
Fair enough. It did happen. There's one more thing I want to talk about. This is not really testing. This is just F1 in general. It's kind of a crazy thing going on. this thing called the novel coronavirus is absolutely going to wreak havoc on the schedule. Like,
Yeah. We already lost China.
we already lost China, and now Bahrain, they're doing something with like they're not letting people who have traveled through the Dubai or Singapore airports come into the country, and going from Australia to Bahrain, you like need to do that. So
Yeah.
that's the first problem.
And
And
then was it
then
Vietnam? Is it
Vietnam
letting
too.
people from Italy in?
Yeah, they're just straight up said no Italians. Like, well, number one, that's the one thing. And like, surprisingly, Ferrari is mostly Italian. In case you didn't
Yeah,
know that.
that's crazy, dude. Are you serious?
And the other team, Alpha Tauri or Tori, however the hell you pronounce it.
Yeah.
But also they have like a problem themselves. Like they have an outbreak themselves. There's about like 30 people, I think, in the country.
In Vietnam?
Like in Vietnam, yeah.
Oh.
And RTL themselves, which is like the German broadcaster, I think, they said we're not even going. We're gonna broadcast it from a remote location, from like their studio or whatever. They're not actually going to the race. So if this happens, and like worst case scenario, all three get canceled, it's gonna be like 2 months between Australia and, which is pretty unprecedented, pretty insane.
Yeah, and that's really disappointing if we lose. I mean, obviously losing the Shanghai race is, I mean, that's not the best track, but it's always sauced up because Red Bull does really well there, so it really brings together the top three. So it sucks to lose, but at the end of the day, I would be much more upset to lose the first race in Vietnam over that. Like, the track looks wild. I think they just added a turn recently to it too.
Another turn, yeah.
But still, that long straightaway with a hairpin followed by another long straightaway. Like, I was excited for that. I was excited for that track, and I hope that they get this thing under control so that we can still have that race because I really want to see it. I really, really, really want to see it.
And Bahrain, honestly, I love, like, Bahrain is one of my favorite races every year. Like, it's consistently been just crazy stuff happening.
Especially since they made it a night race. Like,
oh yeah, definitely.
It's still the same race at its core. It does,
energy.
Obviously night conditions kind of change things a little bit, but we have 2 night races all year, and one of them is Singapore, which is just slightly wider Monaco. And I mean, there's a little bit more wrecks than there are at Monaco because you do have you're carrying more speed through a lot of the track. And then you had the whole shenanigans in turn 1 on the start a couple of years ago. But it's so cool to watch a race in Singapore. As a side note, on TV, I want to go there one day. That'd be so cool. But Bahrain is like, you can really, really race there really well, and to see them racing like that at night, especially last season with Leclerc, even though he had a problem, and that was disappointing. But it's just something it's really cool. I mean, I don't want to see a whole lot of night races in F1 like we were seeing with NASCAR at this point, but to have 2 a season and to lose 1 and maybe 2 if they're not letting people from that are going through the Singapore airport into was it Vietnam, then or no, into Bahrain, then that might be troublesome for Singapore, and I don't like that. I don't like thinking about it.
Yeah. So in conclusion, Corona-chan, please leave us alone. Thank you.
Yeah, go away. We didn't ask for this beer.
We don't want it. It's terrible.
So, with that said, onto a hopefully less serious topic in V8 Supercars really quick. We just wanted to mention how outstanding the racing has been, at least to start the year with that first race. Essentially what happened was they were kind of going down the NASCAR route where there was a lot more downforce being added to the cars. This year they kind of reduced that a little bit by, I believe, 200 pounds of downforce. Correct me if I'm wrong. But
it was 15%, so whatever 15% was.
Nonetheless, it definitely had a very positive outlook on the race. Everybody was very excited going in, and it produced. I don't think anybody left that race unhappy other than, certain fans.
Certain fans, certain drivers who wrecked out,
Yeah. The actual racing product was incredible.
Yeah, definitely a huge improvement over last year. I watched a lot of the races last year, and it just seemed like it wasn't even close to what it used to be. The cars were getting spread out a lot, but this year it seems like we're getting back to that classic close bumper to bumper supercars action that we all fell in love with back in the late 2000s.
Yeah, and we still got the likes of, Scott McLaughlin and Shane Van Gisbergen and stuff like that, like putting a smackdown sometimes. Like, that's going to happen still. But throughout the field, because I saw, race 2 of the weekend, and I was having fun. It was just, it's kind of like, in comparison to, like, the Xfinity Series, because, you have some people run away at the front or whatever. And even F1 at this point, like, from a certain position on back, it is a brawl. And having that, the downforce taken away allows the drivers to obviously race harder and closer and whatever, and it really showed. It was exciting. I don't remember a lot of highlights from it, but it was, damn, I don't know where to go with that. I don't remember a lot of highlights from it specifically, except I remember the Coke car went off track. But yeah, it was just.
Sorry, I was towards the end of the event. Shane Van Gisbergen actually held the lead for a while off of pit strategy.
Oh, that's right.
Late in the race, his car broke, and then McLaughlin was right there to take the win. It was a close fight the whole way, though.
Yeah, you can just cut kind of like where I was tapering off, and then just like interject Jake's thing after he said sorry.
No, I got you.
That'll work out. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to just rewatch the whole thing and edit it because I've not been keeping up with the timestamps. But anyways, so
wait. I have one more thing to say about.
Act like it's
V8s.
a fresh start though. So go ahead.
All right.
3 seconds.
So yeah, V8 supercars. Maybe let me try.
So V8 Supercars.
So I know we might be kind of getting a little off the NASCAR wagon here by talking about V8 supercars, but I encourage, if you don't watch V8 supercars, I encourage you guys to check it out sometime. The next race is in 2 weeks. It's actually a companion event to the Melbourne F1 race, so that's a great chance.
Oh, that's right.
See what they're all about. Pretty much, just NASCAR on road course with a, it's good.
It's
good,
upside down
Especially
NASCAR.
starting next year with NASCAR, with the way that they're going with the next gen car, because I mean, people have talked about it a lot, like the comparison, but I mean that's kind of the direction that NASCAR is going, and I like that. We'll get into that more after we have some. I know this weekend, on Monday and Tuesday, they have some next gen car testing, and we can get a little bit more into that and like the nitty gritty of what's going on there. But that's generally like, because V8 supercars, they're at the core the street car to a degree, just kind of made into a race car, kind of like IMSA is and stuff like that. So it's, go check it out, like Jake said. It'll kind of give you an idea of the direction that NASCAR is heading in. Obviously not that extreme. Like, there are big wings on the back of these things, and NASCAR will not be doing that again. But at its core, that's kind of where we're headed, and you can see why that is exciting, rather than just kind of being like, what do I expect? Like, it'll give you something to like look at and base your ideas off of.
That being said, onto the series that might be modeling what the V8 Supercars have done, and bring it to the Cup Series, pretty much. So we had another wild race this weekend. Thankfully, nobody had any terrible accidents, so we can talk about it as positively as we want. Also, just want to add another side note. We obviously know that Ryan Newman is doing much better now. We're all very, very happy to hear that.
Yeah, he went fishing, and I love that.
He did go
He went and
fishing.
visited Roush Fenway.
That's true. Actually, today, when we're recording this, it should be the same day it goes up, on the 26th. So all of this is what we know today. Hopefully he is still recovering quite quickly, and hopefully we see him on the track pretty soon. But that's all the information we still have. Really, no medical diagnosis has been given to us. So, in due time, if we have any information on that, we'll also bring it up as we go. But this Sunday's Cup race, definitely a great show, I think, thoroughly. I know a lot of people see the current rules package on the 1.5 miles and they think, oh, well, it's not real racing, or for some reason they just don't like the product, which is fair. I can understand that viewpoint. But I feel like if you were going to be upset with what you're seeing, this is a really bad week to have that opinion. Because, wow, what a good race. It started off with a bang when Suarez unfortunately had a bang, I guess, in his engine or something. Something went wrong. The car stopped on the apron. immediately brought the caution out, so we got our first restart on like lap 3 or 4 probably. A lot of really, really good close racing most of the day. We had a competition yellow because it rained the night before, obviously, which postponed half of the Xfinity race till after that. The Chevy teams I think are really what impressed me the most because those Chevy teams last year, as we all know, minus Chase Elliott, were terrible. On a good day, they'd be like 10th, 9th, somewhere in that range, except for Chase Elliott, who may or may not be
Kyle
battling for the
Larson
win.
squeaked out a win.
I mean, yeah, but
That was Dover, so
Dover doesn't even count as a racetrack, honestly. So, speaking of, Kyle Larson had a crazy save early in the race where the car got super sideways. His thing was wrecking loose the whole day, but they managed to salvage something out of it. Chase Elliott won stage 1, and I think
2.
And 2. And we have to give some credit really quick before we talk about how the rest of the race went to John Hunter Nemechek because the results aren't going to show it, but for a very large amount of that race, he was the highest running rookie. And it wasn't all strategy. I know at the end he cycled into, I think it was second place with strategy, but
Yeah.
even if you take that out of the equation, he was running like 16th, 17th, while Christopher Bell, Cole Custer, Tyler Reddick, all of the rookies we expected to dominate are kind of behind that. And obviously,
Custer was nowhere.
I don't think it's going to stay that way the whole season, of course, but I thought that was incredibly interesting because I had personally written John Hunter off as a Rookie of the Year
Yeah.
contender.
Not because of him, but because he is on Front Row Motorsports, which they're not slouches. They're kind of where RSS Racing was in the Xfinity Series the past few years, where like they're there and they can do something, but they're not Joe Gibbs Racing, they're not Penske, they're not Hendrick.
Yeah,
But
like it would be
they're around.
It'd be an incredible overachievement by John Hunter Nemechek to somehow win Rookie of the Year in that car. Nonetheless, speaking of rookies, Christopher Bell was our first actual on-track incident of the day. He lost it off of turn 2 or blew a tire. They never actually made that 100% clear. There might have been a tweet about that, but I didn't happen to see it. Nonetheless, the car went sideways off turn 2, hit the wall pretty good. His race was essentially over after that. He got back out on track, did a bunch of laps, but he was never really a contender after that point. A lot of actual late race cautions due to incidents. We had John Hunter Nemechek actually spin the first time a little bit after that.
Yeah.
We had Martin Truex hit the wall after he blew a right front tire. He got walled right in the middle of the front stretch by Kurt Busch. He was quite upset about it on the radio, so that may or may not be something later on. Who's to know? Poor Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece was one of those people who inherited great track position after that late race caution when Chase Elliott blew his right rear tire, or left rear, whatever it ended up being. And I think he was going to restart second or something of that nature.
Yep, second, and then he blew up.
Under the caution, that very caution, his engine just decided, nah, I'm about to head out. And that was it. And
Yeah, that sucks. That really sucks. Considering both him and Ricky Stenhouse, they obviously, like you said, they got up there through strategy and stuff, but they were running,
It was
at
a
least
good
in the
call.
top 15 all day.
Yeah, Ricky stayed up there at the end.
Maybe not all day, but yeah, Ricky did stay up there. Like, he finished third. Obviously there was a green white checker, but even before that, he was still like fifth or something like that.
heartbreaking for Priest, heartbreaking for JTG Dodgery. I didn't say that right for sure. And even more importantly, heartbreaking for probably the best paint scheme in the whole field. I was super sad to see that go behind the wall in the first place. Being in second place makes it hurt even more. That is an incredible paint scheme. I really hope they race it again.
Yeah.
Okay, so from there on, all of my notes are positive, so that should really show you guys how great this race was. Because usually there's a negative thing that slips in every so often. Every single thing from this point forward is just wow, 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 how good the racing is. We had a crazy battle that was definitely going to come down to the wire between Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, and Alex Bowman. That unfortunately got interrupted by a Ross Chastain caution. But
Yeah.
that was some of the best racing I think we've seen on this package outside of restarts, because it was a very long run on tires. Goodyear brought a really good soft tire that ended up wearing the proper way.
Softer
Softer
than
sure.
usual.
Yeah.
Because damn, they could still be nice and soft, but they're kind of afraid.
I can't talk about this product though, even if it was a little harder than a traditional tire, because it wore, it gave up a lot of speed, and granted, the end of the race kind of decided that wouldn't matter. But who knows how it would have shaken out if we had 2 complete laps? There were people
'cause
absolutely
you had,
charging through the field during that green white checker.
Yeah, you had the run. I think it was Logano was in the lead, or maybe it was Blaney was in the lead. But Harvick was running him down and got to him. Like, didn't run him down super hard. Like, wasn't clearly like super faster than him. But he needed to figure out a way to get around him, and he couldn't. And eventually, his tires fell off to the point where he just kind of tapered back. And that was really nice to see, something like that happen. And just the speeds in the center of the corner going down throughout the run the way that they were was really nice. Because I mean, obviously at the beginning of the run they're hauling like 175 at least mid corner, which is kind of crazy, but that's what we get with this package. But yeah, like Kyle said, the tire would like fall off nicely, and it created things like right towards the end of the race, like you're saying with the battle between Logano was there, but then it really came down to Blaney and Bowman because Bowman finally got around Logano, and he was flying. Like once he got like the move set up, he would sail right past somebody. Like I don't know what he was doing to save his tires like that, but we were all like, oh, he is catching Ryan Blaney right now. Like this is gonna be one of them things. And obviously, it's a whole different story when he does, like if he did catch him, like if he would pass him or whatnot. But it would have at least created a stellar battle between the two of the brightest rookies in the field, coming down to the wire at one of. I mean, obviously, a lot of people want more short tracks and road courses, but mile and a halves are here a lot, and they're probably here to stay to some degree. So it's like one of the most important tracks or most important styles of tracks on the NASCAR schedule for the package to shine, and it was like that. That was stellar. Like I could not believe that we were watching something like that. Like it looked like what was it? Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson at Atlanta in 2011. Like ran him down. I think yeah, Johnson wasn't able to get around Gordon that day, but they had a great battle the whole time. And that's what we were shaping up to see until Ross, who, granted, he did get top 10 in the first stage, and he was running pretty good. But then it just kind of, I don't know what was going on with him. He just kept being loose and got that spin at the most unfortunate time in the world.
I think we still could have had that Ryan Blaney Alex Bowman battle, but their crew chiefs really dropped the ball, honestly, with that last
That's true.
call. Like at least in my like mentality, usually it's like if you're gonna pit from the lead, you need obviously you have the scenario where like everyone stays out, but you need like however many cars are on the lap, like 22 other cars to stay out. Whereas if you're gonna pit and you're gonna take 4 tires, all you need is like 5 cars to stay out and like 3 cars to take 2 tires. That's all.
Yeah, and you're done.
And you're just like you have no chance. Like Ryan Blaney was making no on that entire lap. He made no progress. Like he was still like 12th, and then he just got walled.
Yeah.
So one more thing to add on the late race pitting situation. I actually heard an interesting fact that Dale Jr. mentioned. He mentioned that if there's any time in the race where staying out is going to work, it's going to be at the end like that. Because at that point in the race, the track is as cool as it's going to get. It's getting a little bit later in the afternoon. And, you know, the Las Vegas tire, it doesn't like fall off as much as, you know, it would at a track like Richmond or Fontana or Darlington. But it also isn't like as solid as it would be at a track like Michigan or Kansas. It's kind of like in a middle ground.
Yeah.
So it's feasible, but it was surprising to me how well those cars were able to hold station. Though I do think the fact that it takes so long for that package to wind up also had something to do it. And they also did only get 1 lap before the caution came out. So, you know, it would have been interesting if one of those cars with tires got a clean run through. I know Jimmy Johnson had 2 tires and he got up to 4th real quick. So if those full 2 laps actually went through, it would have been interesting to see what happens. But unfortunately, they inevitably crashed after trying real hard for a whole lap.
There's actually a screenshot of them going 6 wide.
Really?
Yeah.
Even better.
But either way, there ended up being a crash coming to the white flag. The caution flag came out shortly after into turn 1, and that was it. Joey Logano was your winner, which also means we had 2 people pick the correct winner in Jake and Mike Fallon, both of which picked Joe Log himself. Yeah. And that means our current standings are I am 1 for 2. Mike is also 1 for 2. Jake is 0 for 1, I believe, because I don't think he made a pick for Daytona, which means
1 for 1.
1 for 1, correct. Which means that he is the highest percentage correct out of anybody right now. Everybody else that's ever been on the show is either 0 for 1 or 0 for 2. And
I should be 1 for 2.
Incorrect.
I should be.
Ryan Newman decided that he was going to block, and you're incorrect. Anyway, so On to Auto Club, which I'd like to say is predictable, but I don't think it's going to be because I thought that Las Vegas was going to be another kind of race where we wouldn't see anything happen. Who knows what they're going to be capable of next weekend? Hopefully, it's
Yeah.
another good race. Every single race pretty much this season has been good, so thankfully, we're going into this with a lot of optimism and not a lot of doubt in what we're going to see. I'll start it off, I guess. My pick for this weekend is, for once, not a Gibbs driver. Shocker.
That's
I,
a good choice because it's not working out.
I think it's going to be Chase Elliott this week. I think he has shown that he is still a top Chevy team, even if the Chevys as a whole are elevated, I should say. I think that he's always had that raw speed that everybody needs to have in order to compete for wins. And his team didn't change very much from last year. So if they can get it done with a lesser car, now that they have something they can compete with, I feel like there's nothing stopping them.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'm going to stay in the Chevy camp for my pick as well because obviously, thinking back to last season, it makes me want to pick a Gibbs car to win Auto Club. What Truex won that race last year, I think. And I mean, going into Las Vegas, that's kind of what I expected was Gibbs cars to be really, really good. Denny obviously had to start from the back, and that created a whole thing. Kyle Busch was just having a bad day. Martin Truex Jr. was up there and had his own incidents and whatever. Eric Jones just didn't have a good day either. Blah blah blah. But as much as the Fords are doing really good, I feel like we're due for a Chevy win at a track like that from somebody other than Chase Elliott. And I think that somebody that has got it done at Fontana before is going to be the one to get it done this weekend, and I think that's going to be Kyle Larson. I mean, last season, I would pick him. I'm a big Kyle Larson fan. I'm also a big Kurt Busch fan, and that's why I picked Kurt for this past weekend. It really didn't work out, though. Let's not talk about that. But, I mean, Kyle Larson, especially at places like Atlanta last season, and the tracks where the tires do fall off a decent bit, even this past weekend with the car that was, not fully under him, the whole time he was doing pretty good. He ended up, I think, around ninth. But he was running good, and I feel like with the ability that the Chevys have shown at these 1.5 2-mile tracks, obviously we haven't been to a 2-mile, but I can't expect it to be a whole lot different at a 2-mile versus a 1.5 mile. But with that being said, and like that, just Chevy's being good again, I feel like it's prime time for Kyle Larson to win at a 2-mile track again. Because I mean, what was it? 2017, he won Fontana, he won both Michigans. Like it was a prime Kyle Larson year for 2-mile tracks. But yeah, that's my pick. I'm going with Kyle Larson. He's from California. Let's get it done.
No, you guys are bugging. Penske looks really good, eh? I'm picking young Ryan Blaney.
Why
Mm.
RB?
He's been due for one these last 2 races. He's been pretty close. I think he's gonna get that chip off his shoulder right now.
Pretty safe
I'm
pick.
gonna keep the trend of picking the obvious and go with Kyle Busch. He's been pretty solid the last 10 years at Auto Club. I don't know how many wins he's had, but it feels like it's at least 5.
At least a couple. Just a good few.
My rationale behind that is it just seems like that can be more of a driver's track, and Kyle Busch seems just to have something figured out there, as well as the Gibbs cars when it comes to downforce dependent tracks with this package. However, the race last year was only like the second race on this package, and I know a lot of teams were still trying to run that trimmed out stuff, but it really seems like at a track like Auto Club, trimmed out is not the way to go. But we'll see.
Yeah, RCR.
We have a whole year on this package. It is still a long straight a ways on that track, but I still think with how worn out and flat the track is, downforce is gonna be king there.
Well, with that all being said, we have another great weekend of racing ahead of us. We have, I think, it's just an Xfinity and Cup race to talk about this next week. So hopefully there's a lot that happens. That being said, I'm Kyle Riley. There's Matt, there's Jake, there's Arnold. All of us can be found in the description. We'll have either our Twitter or Instagram, whatever it might be. I know Matt has a new photography Instagram because he's a NASCAR photographer. So make sure you go ahead and follow that. We'll make sure we put that link in the description below. And
I take the picture.
he does take the picture. But anyway, with that being said, as the great Mike Fallon once said, until next week, we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Yeah.